Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Get down! Baltimore!
What are they giving?
Everything out of me. They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that.
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Sunday, September 11th, 2022. My name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined on my screen by Spencer Nathaniel Schultz. He was in attendance at the game today in the Meadowlands. Got nice and sopping wet, had himself a good time, and he is joining me now from a room, an apartment building, I presume, in the area. How's it going, pal? The on-site reporter today.
I'm in the Boken of Hose. It was an incredible day. The Ravens slop early, wet, disgusting game, drop passes, run game doesn't get going. Mike McDonald's defense, my kind of underrated X factor of the season. How would a 34-year-old defensive coordinator, first time calling plays in the NFL, do? Couldn't have done much better. Awesome game, awesome performance by the Ravens. I'm pumped up. The Ravens are undefeated, 1-0.
Yeah, 1-0. Can't start any better than that, can you? And they certainly did get off to a great start for the season today. Interesting day, in fact, where you wake up and we had the report come out on Friday. We haven't potted since then that the negotiations would be put on hold after they had not come to an agreement. Ravens and Lamar Jackson, and his self-imposed deadline took hold, I guess. And then we wake up to the details this morning, courtesy of Chris Mortensen, which let me pull that up. But yeah, it was just kind of a wild morning when you really think about it. You wake up to that, and it makes you wonder, does this portend poorly for things, for things that are going to happen maybe today, maybe for the season? They ultimately don't. But here I got it from Mort, the tweet from 6:49 a.m. this morning. Sources: Lamar Jackson rejected a Ravens 6-year contract offer with $133 million fully guaranteed at signing, which is more than Russell Wilson, $124 million, and Kyler Murray, $103.3, but well short of the $230 million fully guaranteed deal that Watson got. He goes on in a very long kind of thread here. There's a lot of good info in there, but
it was so detailed, which is much appreciated.
It was good. My main kind of takeaway from it was, though, that the NFLPA said that if you want to receive a fully guaranteed contract, then you have more than earned it, and you should do that. And it kind of seems like the fully guaranteed thing really is the hang up here, which I think people were maybe in denial of to an extent, but it sounds like that's kind of what he wants. It sounds like the Ravens don't want to do that, and that is going to be the separating factor here as we move forward. And it does seem like, some people were saying the front office leaked it. In my opinion, maybe the NFLPA actually leaked it. Who knows? But that is just another wrinkle in that situation. And then they get out there.
That's how the day started. How the day started.
It is how the day started. And, I'm getting ready. I'm brewing the coffee. I'm doing my Ari Gold tweet. And yeah, that was just kind of a weird sort of wrench in the proceedings there. But then the game gets started, and you want to forget about all that. And I really didn't give it too much thought, honestly. I was like, what? I just want to fucking watch football. All right. We've been talking about this for months. We literally have a running joke about how we don't talk about it anymore. And yeah, there it was. And I was just like, yeah, sure. Okay. I get it. But it's not going to happen for the time being. We just got to live with this, and let's move forward to the game. They do that. The game gets off to an interesting start where it felt like the offense was maybe sleepwalking a little bit. And the defense, they didn't look bad, but they had given up a few early runs, first down runs to Breece Hall and Michael Carter. And it's like, all right, where are we going with this? But I think we both might have said in the prediction, Ravens get off to a slow start, and then they, settle in. They go forward with a workman-like 2-score plus win. And that is exactly what happened with Lamar Jackson tossing 3 touchdowns. He winds up throwing a weird interception to DJ Reed, I believe, just kind of a toss it up there at the end of maybe one of his last drives. And yeah, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, a good stat line. He had 17 yards on the ground, I think, with Kenyon Drake leading the way with 34. I believe Duvernay actually might have led the way in the receiving. I have the box score right here. Yeah, so you had Bateman actually leading the way with 2 catches for 59 yards. So an interesting game from Bateman where he had the drop, I guess you could call it. It was more of a force out. And then yeah, just a little bit of a rough start for him, but he has the long touchdown, 2 touchdowns from Devin Duvernay, which your boy called that one. I might have said all purpose, which, maybe that would include
the details don't have to be specified.
Details, yeah, we don't have to focus on the semantics. I said 2 touchdowns. He got 2 touchdowns, 4 catches, 54 yards, 5 for 52 quietly from Mark Andrews, who kind of was getting bracketed all game. You could really see them keying in on him. And ultimately, that's what freed a couple other guys up. And then you had 2 for 19 from Demarcus Robinson, who just sort of looked the part as that rotational veteran that they needed. But offense looked solid. Defense looked really, really, really good, to your point. To the Mike McDonald point, like, this is exactly what you needed. Good pressure throughout the game. You had an interception from Marcus Williams, which a little bit of a feather in EDC's cap there. And just an overall just workmanlike, very solid win. I think it went pretty much to the script that we were both expecting. But what is your instant reaction?
Instant reaction, I think we saw what we've seen in terms of, number one, there's 2 things. There's one very familiar. We saw that the Ravens didn't dial up the quarterback run game in week 1. They have not done that. They didn't do that this year. In Vegas last year, they didn't do that in heavy dosage. They didn't do it against the Browns the year prior. They didn't do it against the Dolphins the year prior. Lamar Jackson's mechanics have been outstanding in each of the previous openers. And again, gets off to a slow start. They're trying to spread the field a little bit. I digress. He played very well. What I did see offensively, that was what has been talked about so much all the time, Twitter, on this podcast, everything in between. Under center offense, drop back game under center, play action boot game, as I've referred to it on this podcast many times, the offense. It felt like that was what we were going to get last year. We heard Greg Roman talk about it last year. Demarcus Robinson, you mentioned 2 catches. Those 2 catches were both on designed rollouts from under center, and one of them moved the chains. The other one gained a substantial amount of yardage. Very big, a nice dynamic. It felt like the run game, not great, and didn't quite have it down pat. The Ravens took a preseason off for their starters in many ways. Lamar Jackson doesn't play. We don't see a ton of Tyler Linderbaum. Many, many key players rested in this preseason, and we saw them have a little bit of a preseason moment in the first half. They turned it on. Lamar Jackson looked great in the second half. Absolutely balled out, and it was a really, really, really fun enterprise to watch them face Joseph Vincent Flacco, who I did hear a bathroom chant of Italians for Flacco.
What is the context there? Is he Italian?
Yeah, Joseph Vincent Flacco.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I never really he never just seemed like ethnic to me in any way. He just seemed like
he looked as Aryan as possible.
Yeah, there's definitely some whitey vibes there, which is fine. It's he is who he is. But yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, don't let me derail you on that point. I saw that tweet and it piqued my interest a little bit. The antenna kind of went up.
Definitely. And so, the game gets sloppy early on overall. The Ravens aren't moving the chain super well. The run game's not working. They're not running Lamar. A couple drops, this, that, the other. The tension starts to build. But flipping over to the other side of the ball, the Ravens defense was relentless, and they did commit a couple penalties that extended drives, a couple small things early on, but ultimately relentless, harassed Joe Flacco from the opening drive that the Jets had, Mike McDonald's first series as a defensive coordinator. First play, first down, and then a 3-and-out is a 4-and-out. And from there, the Ravens harassed Joe Flacco relentlessly the rest of the game, produced a ton of pressure. Guys like Justin Houston, guys like Justin Madubuike, guys like Patrick Queen were relentless. It felt like they were calculated. They were able to push the pocket and ultimately disrupt Joe Flacco to the point of no return. We end up seeing Marcus Williams, my bold prediction. We see a turnover from Marcus Williams, get a huge pick. And the Ravens really still couldn't capitalize offensively, and then suddenly hit a groove. And from there, it was over. So the Ravens had a little bit of trial and tribulation, offensively especially, but their defense remained steadfast. I thought they tackled well on special teams. They didn't allow any big plays. It was a pretty clean performance on a rainy day. And considering the drama of last year, considering the stage, 9/11 in MetLife Stadium, slow start, sloppy game, Flacco, he's a mutter. He didn't have a great game today. He played awful, but, could always throw the deep ball in the rain well. So it played on the tension chords, on the anxious chords for a lot of fans. Ultimately, felt like Jets fans had a ton of confidence. I was there. And then the defense didn't relent. Lamar Jackson opens it up. And once that Rashad Bateman deep ball hit, game over. And we watched Devin Duvernay seem like a capable triplet.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. And I think that was kind of an argument that I think I've been comfortable making all along. I still get the point of like, if one of those guys gets hurt, you might be screwed because we haven't heard hide nor hair of James Prochet. It feels like in a long time after he got off to a pretty good start. And then Tylan Wallace obviously hasn't done much. Likely, definitely a rough debut game from him. He had a couple balls go off his hands, not all his fault. He also had a penalty as well, maybe some first game jitters there, so I can excuse that. But yeah, I mean, from the two guys that you needed to step up, you saw it. I mean, Bateman, he got off to that rough start, and then he shrugged it off, and they got him wide open on that kind of cover two beater, and he just kind of strolls into the end zone. A perfect throw by Lamar. Really, probably a pretty good call by Roman there. I'm sure people don't want to hear that, but yeah, just they really needed a big game out of those guys, and to get that, and to get Duvernay being the guy to step up and make that play, because it always feels like you need a guy in a game where you're supposed to win to like step up and make a play and shatter that suspension of disbelief for the team that is trying to pull the upset, especially in a week one game where everyone believes in themselves and like everyone can kind of, go forward on the front foot and like try to make something happen, try to make a statement. For Duvernay to kind of be that guy. And really people aren't talking about how like pretty sick of a catch that was, that first one that he had, where he's one-on-one with the guy, he runs that flag route, and Lamar just puts the air under it. Has to, I think, leave his feet and like make the catch with the guy kind of draped all over him. And that was sort of the one that really broke it open, made it 10-0. Then the second one, obviously, that was a 3rd down and 10. They brought everyone at Lamar. It looked like we haven't seen like the actual all 22 yet, but that is just what it looked like. And he just, once again, he beat his man one-on-one. He had a couple steps and just jumped up and grabbed it. So great game today by Duvernay for sure. The Bateman.
Couple nice returns as well. Nothing huge. Caught a ball, advanced 10 yards, just fell forward into 10 yards. Also swept around an end towards the sideline. Ravens special teams look sharp. Which
is what he is. He's the guy who's just like I think we've always kind of said that he's the guy who's just going to move the ball forward. Like he's not really
your grandfather's favorite punt returner.
Right. Yeah.
He goes north and south when he gets the ball as a returner.
Exactly. Just full head of steam. There's not like, you think of the Grant Delpit hit that he had in college. Like he's that bowling ball type player. But I don't know, to that point, he looked a little bit more complete to me today. I mean, you've got to have some route running nuance and some hands to be able to do what he did to score those touchdowns. So that's certainly huge. And, a great start for him. Obviously some concern with the run game not looking great. Kenyon Drake, I thought looked okay. Maybe could use a little bit more burst.
I'm gonna say I thought Kenyon Drake was very bad in the run game from what I saw initially. Going to go back and look. Maybe I'll sound like an idiot. Don't love to have those kind of takes, but seemed like he was putting his eyes on the floor very quickly after receiving handoffs, limiting himself, his field of vision, some things. And hey, just signed with the team a couple weeks ago. Mike Davis gets a big run, gets the ball popped out on a great play. A weird run game from the Ravens today.
Drake did have the nice the setup screen, and he had a nice gain on that. He looked explosive and kind of wiggly on that one. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass, and he had some decent runs to the perimeter, I think. But as far as having an in between the tackles type of presence, they didn't really have it. They had the one Davis run, but that was also sort of the outside. And he did have the fumble in it, which thankfully the Ravens recovered. But not much from Lamar in the run game either. He had the one 3rd down conversion, which was just sort of a scramble, eerily actually reminiscent of the Joe Burrow run in the AFC Championship last year. They didn't really need it, was the thing, which is nice. When you're playing against a team like this, it kind of reminds me of the 2020 season when they were playing all these bad teams, and it kind of felt like they were just like fucking around and experimenting a little bit. Maybe they were doing a little bit of that, but yeah, just not a ton from the run game today. Unfortunately, it feels like they're going to need to iron that out. It's going to be hard going forward with the uncertainty at left tackle, because Stanley obviously didn't play. Jawan James was out there. I guess he was playing admirably. I didn't really see much of it, to be honest. And then tears his Achilles, which is really unfortunate. It feels like he's probably going to be out for the year again. And hopefully that's not a wrap on his career, but it well might be after all that he's been through. And then I guess that leaves them with Patrick McCary for the time being. He got in there and played solid. So yeah, I guess you're going to start him at left tackle next week. And then you've got Powers out there. Linderbaum, he looks solid at times. He also is just, to your and Cole's concern, he did get overwhelmed by Quinnen Williams at times, it looked like. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, Zeitler solid. Moses very solid. I mean, it's just like they're going to have to pick their spots in the run game. They're going to have to say, all right, like if we need one, we're going off the right side here. Like that's just how it's going to have to be.
It definitely is. And it's really unfortunate for James. I believe it was the same Achilles. I do need to be fact checked on that, but
It was, but it wasn't like in the middle of the tendon. It was like off the bone. So apparently that's like better. I don't know.
well, I hope it's as good as it could be for him. You hate to see it. Hopefully that's not the end of his career. Hopefully he's able to come back and live a good life and be able to play. But ultimately, the Ravens did take I would say a lottery pick on him and gave him a very small contract and looked like it was good through practice and camp. And they felt good enough to go trot him out in week 1 as the left tackle. But luckily they did pay Pat McCary, who can go play left tackle and bridge that gap. And if Ronnie Stanley can't come back, that's a whole diatribe we don't need to go down today. But McCary as your left tackle could be a lot worse. Overall, like you said, Linderbaum did look a little overwhelmed, but Zeitler, Moses, consummate professionals, veterans, they were able to, really rely on that side, give a little bit of fullback help on the other side, a little bit of tight end help, and go get things done. And I thought that ultimately Lamar Jackson had clean pockets a lot of the day. And early on, it felt like he almost was not used. And again, this was a preseason for him, hadn't played the entire preseason, but almost running out of clean pockets a little bit, settled down, realized that he did trust his protection. McCary comes in as well. And from the point McCary came in, and, you're not going to go say that he's the reason that they unlock and that he was so much better than James. But from there, I believe they scored touchdowns in 2 of their next 3 drives. And ultimately were able to feel comfortable, feel confident, start slinging the ball around a little bit. The weather kind of let up and we're able to go. So you hate to see it from James, but luckily they do have multiple options at left tackle aside from Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, they still do too, which is the really good thing. I mean, like we talked about how they just didn't take it seriously enough last year. And this year, I mean, obviously it sucks to see James go down, but having McCary there who has the familiarity and the versatility, and then you drafted Dan Falele. So if he has to get in, maybe you move Morgan Moses over to left tackle. I mean, there's just a lot of different things you could do, which really is just a good spot to be in. And, you're 1-0. You proved you can already do it by having a slot McCary in there. You got a week 2 game coming up against the Dolphins, who looked pretty good today, but are not insurmountable, especially at home. So they're going to have some more time to kind of experiment with this offensive line and see about getting things right, probably for that Bills game, which is going to be week 4, I believe. So
it will. And Linderbaum, it looked like the biggest advantage of Linderbaum, and I haven't gotten to watch a ton. I haven't gotten all 22 yet, watched a little TV broadcast. It looked like you said, he was overwhelmed in those one-on-one situations, but his ability to climb to the second level was awesome quite a few times and be able to be mobile, be able to be agile in space. And I think ultimately did help. It felt like he was urgent in pass protection when he wasn't in one-on-one. So a lot to see there. Obviously didn't get a ton of time early, but curious to see how his learning curve goes, how those things go. Mark Andrews, the Jets, like you said, definitely were funneling, coning him off, trying to, dedicate safety and linebacker help to him. And the Ravens struggled and then were able to spread the ball out a little bit. Lamar Jackson started to spray and then open things up. Mark Andrews had a couple big catches, 3 first down catches, I believe, in the second half. So was a big part of getting things going. And you go see, it felt like Duvernay was a big part of the offensive game plan early on, trying to get him screens, trying to get him involved, get him some quick passes, a couple things early. And then from there, I mean, the highlight of the game, Lamar Jackson, no look pass. That looked like they ran a pylon concept, basically crossers in the end zone. And Lamar steps up, a little bit of pressure, and then just perfectly deals one to Devin Duvernay. And already had put one there for Duvernay's second touchdown of the day. And from there, it really was just the floodgates.
Yeah, it really was. And it was kind of floodgates all day for the defense for me. And like highlighting some guys particularly, I mean, I know we were kind of tickled by Max Mitchell's comments there about Calais Campbell being just another dude. And he certainly was not that. He was in there kind of all day. I think he might have gotten maybe the first sack or had a hand in the first sack on Flacco, of which there were 3, I think. And then they had 11 total QB hits via ESPN box score, which is pretty wild. And you kind of hate to see that for our guy, Joe. But I mean, it was Calais, obviously, but I mean, Justin Madubuike looked like an absolute force out there. I think Campbell spoke to that a little bit after the game. That's another guy that just doesn't really get talked about a ton, but if they start to get some pass rushing juice out of him, that's really going to mitigate a lot of the concerns they have in that pass rushing department, which also you had Justin Houston having a big game today. I think he had a sack or maybe a sack and a half. So, I mean, it definitely, they were going up against George Fant and, not really a whole lot there at tackle. Max Mitchell, we mentioned, obviously, but it was an encouraging sign from the pass rushing department there, which they needed.
They definitely did. Calais Campbell, to your point, the Jets opening drive, 3rd and 5, was able to get get a big quarterback hit on Flacco, ends up closing it out. Flacco gets an intentional grounding on that instead of taking a sack, and they did live in the backfield ultimately. It felt like, much to Patrick Queen's points earlier this week, they were playing a lot of comfortable football where they were in split safety looks, able to keep things in front of them. Flacco at one point did start really trying to funnel towards the middle of the field, but also ended up in an interception for Marcus Williams. It felt like they were making them live between the numbers very much so offensively for the Jets, and were able to make plays several times. And I think someone that really was impressive today was Brandon Stevens defensively, who went out, had multiple good reps, goes up against a Garrett Wilson, a top 10 pick, able to go defend a pass in the end zone, made a few nice plays there for them as well. Unfortunately, Fuller comes away with a little bit of an injury, but Marlon Humphrey, you don't feel like there's any way they were attacking him, was used multiple ways, was blitzed a few times as well by McDonald ultimately, but it felt like the Ravens corners came to play in this one very much so. Marcus Williams had a great game. Every tackle at one point, I want to say like second, early third quarter, it felt like he was a stopper. He was ending drives, getting from second down to third down, doing those high leverage situations really well. So I felt like the Ravens defensive backs played well as Justin Houston and Justin Madubuike and Patrick Queen were getting consummate pressure on Joe Flacco.
Yeah, they really were. And that was awesome. I mean, Patrick Queen, another guy we really should kind of shout out here, who I was talking about a little bit on Twitter the other day based on what Connor was telling us about what they wanted to do as far as exploiting the perimeters of the defense and using the speed of guys like Michael Carter, Breece Hall, Braxton Berrios even. And, is Queen going to be able to stay step for step with those guys and be an eliminator in that fashion? He had maybe one or two get past him, but it wasn't just him, obviously. And then he also made some plays in that regard. And then he made plays coming forward. He's just a guy who he's a middle linebacker, but when you let him pin his ears back and say, hey, just do this one thing. Don't worry about doing, 2 or 3 things. Don't worry about am I the green dot?
Put the blinders on him a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of give him some tunnel vision, let him exploit that athleticism that he has and just fucking be a beast. And he really did do that today. And Flacco was probably seeing a lot of him in the backfield. Definitely looked like he was. And shout out to Patrick Queen for a nice game today. He's going to need to have a good season, off to a good start.
Definitely. And I think Chuck Clark also, obviously the punch out that he had, massive. Felt like he was also ending drives and had those kind of players in pursuit. Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark, Patrick Queen. We saw a little bit of Malik Harrison today as well. Saw him lined up as an outside linebacker quite a bit. And those guys went and tackled well, ended plays, regrouped, rallied, limited yards after the catch, limited yards after contact, many of those things ultimately. So that was a big thing to watch for me was, hey, how is this Ravens team that struggled so much to tackle and finish and do basic things well, fundamental aspects, going to come out and have a performance? And going against 2 running backs, Breece Hall, obviously a rookie, Michael Carter, did look very explosive, did look very shifty, had a very nice day. Probably the Jets' best player on offense far and away today. And they did do some battles with him. He did stab them a couple times, but were able to ultimately corral him and walk out of there feeling like they had a fundamentally sound game defensively.
Yeah, definitely. Quiet game from Owe, definitely, but it felt like he was maybe a guy that they were keying on a little bit that allowed the other guys to, light their hair on fire and get after it. So hopefully he's going to get some better opportunities to go out there and have some sack production, but it definitely looked like he was collapsing pockets. He was a big part of it. Saw Josh Ross had he had the opening special teams tackle, actually. So good for him to get in the mix. Broderick Washington actually had himself a sack that got called back, which I thought was unfortunate. He had a nice camp, so that would have been nice to see.
I believe Madubuike also had a sack that was called back.
I think so. Yeah, I think there were multiple. So yeah, definitely just some really nice performances. It really sucks that Kyle Fuller actually had a nice performance, and then he got kind of B-slapped there by Elijah Moore, and something happened with his leg, and it seems like it might be a serious thing. So unfortunately, might be the end of the line for Kyle Fuller already, which really does suck. Corner, another position they have good depth at, but you do hate to see that for him.
They never get enough corner depth, no matter how healthy or talented or thin or deep they are. But Madubuike in the third quarter, we ultimately saw him go. That he had a sack split between him and Patrick Queen. The following play, he chased down Michael Carter on a pass for a no-yard gain, and then followed that up with a sack that was called back on a Brandon Stevens, the ensuing drive, a Brandon Stevens illegal contact. So on 3rd and 9, Madubuike goes and gets a sack. You see him go flip out in the end zone, doing like very like flexy celebration. You could just tell how fired up he was. And you hear Calais Campbell in the post game basically saying he can be as talented, as effective, get as much accolade as any player in this league. And I will say it today. I will go back and say it again. You know, my quiet, redacted comment is that I feel like, you know, you look at an Aaron Donald and you watch a Justin Madubuike, and no, he's not going to be the greatest defensive player of our lifetime, but you see some of those same traits in how lean he is, explosive, agile, the leverage. He's not a super tall guy, the functional strength that he possesses, what he can do in space, and see how he could be a player that has a huge impact, not only between the tackles, but able to pursue to the sideline as an interior defender. So thought he had an outstanding game. The Ravens defensive front, super fun. Justin Houston was dominant in the first half, and just really fun to watch this team go attack defensively.
Yeah, it definitely was. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of, there's not really a whole lot to say other than what we've already covered. It was just sort of that workmanlike win that we discussed. It got off exactly to the start that we were talking about, where it was a slow one, and then they just sort of settle in and they go forward and they do what they need to do. And a lot of that comes back to number 8, who is going to need to have himself a big season here to prove a lot of things. And it's going to have to also happen in the postseason as well. It can't just be these regular season wins against teams like this. He's really going to have to step his game up. But man, it looked like they needed him to kind of turn the Jets on there in the second quarter and then after. And he certainly did that. So a great game all around by everyone. And he's kind of the guy that I'm looking at as the talisman, and a good start to the season for him.
Most certainly. And going and looking around the league and watching a Saints-Falcons game, or watching a Browns-Panthers game, or a Bengals-Steelers game, or a Titans-Giants game, or any of these other really close games that happened today, the Ravens were a class above, and a lot of that was due to Lamar Jackson. The run game wasn't there. The pass protection was solid enough to give him time, and was able to distribute the ball in high leverage situations on third down, able to, didn't use his legs a ton today, but able to go extend a drive on 3rd and 8 by having pocket presence, being able to roll out, dip, and then go function. So thought Lamar Jackson looked awesome. He has looked awesome every week 1 of his career that he has played in as a starter. So we have been blessed as, Ravens fans to be able to watch him go play so well out of the gate. And again, didn't play in the preseason. It felt like the Ravens tried to take a little bit of a different approach due to all the injuries they had last year. And to watch them figure it out quickly in the pass game was really fun to watch. And, did miss Rashad Bateman early. Rashad Bateman, who I guess my Twitter shout out of people that can turn around and bend over is me saying Rashad Bateman just shut a lot of people up, and then saying why, because he had 1 catch. He was open 3 times downfield. The first one, Lamar targets off by about, 6-7 yards, wasn't able to go make a play, but 3 times you see Rashad Bateman accelerate deceptively fast through safety coverage, through zone concepts, and run away. And to have him finally go haul one in felt like a eureka moment for this offense.
Somebody said because he had 1 catch.
Yes.
That was his second career touchdown. It was a fucking field flipper. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
blew the top off of coverage. I actually had someone, whatever, we don't have to talk about it. Someone said that Perriman would have done the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And he would have fucking clanked it off of his, like, I didn't, no disrespect to Rashad Perriman, but we're talking about a guy who has a lot of potential. And we're, listen, you can think what you want, but he's our guy. So deal with it.
Watching him take the top off was a real joy, in my opinion.
No context. Town podcast. Watching him take the top off was a real joy.
Yes, tops off are always a good thing. And
tops off for the boys.
Exactly. And watching that, watching him run through coverage multiple times was a great aesthetic experience at the game, where you watch him just run away from safeties as they're transitioning. He's able to run 70, 80% and then hit 90, 95% into his break with such rhythm and efficiency in his feet and go take the top off. And then to go see Devin Duvernay get his second, as Jonas shouted me out and I've screamed into the void, second time he's ever been thrown the ball downfield, and absolutely twirls, concentrates, and engulfs a football in the end zone. So seeing those guys go make plays was awesome. Isaiah Likely didn't hear a ton from.
They tried with him though, which I liked. Like Boyle not active today, and they were like, you know what, we're just gonna roll with this kid, and like he's gonna be the tight end too. And they went for it. It didn't work out, but just keep that faith, and you'll be rewarded for it.
Exactly, well said. So I think that Lamar calmed down as the game went on and understood that he had time, and they kept in Pat Ricard to block and didn't get in a lot of situations consistently where he felt like he had to move. And when we were talking to Connor doing the pregame show, I'm going through this: John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Carl Lawson, Quinnen, all these talented pass rushers they have. And then knowing that Jawan James goes down, knowing that Linderbaum, who did have to fight for his life a couple of times, but Linderbaum's first game, all of these things, wouldn't have been surprising to see them fare much worse, considering just on paper. And I thought that they did a nice job. I thought he managed well. And they didn't use his legs. They didn't need to. They didn't have a good ground game at all, and still got the job done handedly against a really talented Jets defense.
Yeah, and that's for all the people that, say, oh, what's going to happen when his, legs wear down on him? It's like, well, I mean, there are games where he doesn't use them, and he has passing performances like this, which aren't like lighting the world on fire, but they're damn well good enough to win you a game with a roster like this.
It was efficiency. And to be honest, how many 3-touchdown passing games does Lamar Jackson have last year? Not a ton. And the talk of 2019 and going back and this, that, and the other, 17 completions, 3 of which are touchdowns. You talk about the late interception he throws to Reed, up 3 scores. Fine. You don't want to have that happen, but was able to turn on a really efficient stretch of football in the second and third quarter as his defense is playing well and his run game isn't there because he had a modicum of protection. It felt like he had a thin little layer that helped him get by. And, they didn't have to go to plan B.
Yeah, definitely. It felt like to me, it felt, and he did have a good game in the opener last year, to your point, but it felt almost like an inverse of last year's opening game where everything just felt so frantic. And it felt like they were chasing a lot of that game against the Raiders. And, it has like this weird ending and everything. They arguably could have won that game, but Dan Carlson decided to make a 55-yard field goal, which I'm going to be like Skip Bayless and, pretend that didn't go in. But yeah, ultimately, it just felt very, very calm. I'm going to keep overusing the workman-like term. It just, they put on their hard hats and they went out there and they did what they had to do. 24-9, can't ask for a much better start.
You can't. I will say Kyle Hamilton definitely had a rough first half. I will say, and I'm going to go back and watch, and maybe he was tripped, whatever, but opening kickoff, my eyes went to 14. He's on the kickoff team and was put on his butt. Missed a couple tackles as a penalty, and felt like he calmed down a little bit too in the second half. They put him in a lot of high leverage situations. Feels like he's a part of passing downs, 3rd and 6+, 3rd and 5+, very much so. Chuck Clark rolling down into being that dime backer and using a lot of split safety looks between him and Marcus Williams. So I'm curious to see how he progresses ultimately, but it felt like he had some early struggles, missed a couple tackles, ultimately settled down, almost had a little scoop and score situation as well. That would have been very apropos for him considering his career, but would say he's really the one to watch in that sense. That I'm curious to see how they continue to integrate him, and didn't think he got off to a fast start, but curious to see how he follows up this performance.
Yeah, it makes me glad they hung on to Clark too, because it just kind of in the similar to the way that
Clark had an incredible game today.
Yeah, in a similar way to how they invested heavily in offensive line, they get to, that affords them the ability to experiment a little bit early in the year with that position group. You can now kind of do the same thing at safety, where it's like, all right, well, we can move Kyle in here, and like we don't have to rely on him. We can put him in high leverage situations selectively, but he's not going to be like counted on per se. And yeah, just hope to see some progression for him for sure. He's just such a weird like body type. You and I talked about it when we saw him in person in the preseason game. It's just like an outside linebacker playing safety to an extent. Like it's just weird. So like there's going to be, maybe some growing pains. There's going to be some settling in, but I think all along the whole idea is the type of person that he is, the type of study that he is ultimately what's going to propel him to start him, hopefully. So yeah,
most certainly. And Chuck Clark is there. Marcus Williams immediately looked like a defensive leader and someone that you can rely on to not only executing coverage, but go end plays. Huge game. I think he was officially credited 12 combined tackles. 10 of them were solo. Has an interception, has a pass breakup, all of those things. So in a very deep room, Again, Brandon Stevens, I thought, did have a penalty that was suspect, but looked like he was really strong. Looked like as a cornerback, he possessed the ability to read leverage and flip his hips and go make plays. So in addition to Malik Harrison, in addition to Patrick Queen, feels like they have a lot of players that can go end plays, which is a big improvement from last year. Very simple, very fundamentally put. Someone has to make a fucking tackle. And they did that today.
Yeah, and you talk about getting down to that second and third option on the offense where it's like, all right, you're going to key on Andrews and you're going to key on the run game. All right, well, I'm going to throw it to Devin Duvernay and he's going to make a play. Similarly to defense where it's like, okay, well, you're going to avoid this guy. Well, Brandon Stevens is going to be up in your grill and he's going to, Elijah Moore, he's going to grab your jersey and he's going to rip you down and prevent a first down catch there. He's going to make a play in the end zone. Like, it's really nice to see that because he is kind of one of those rotational options. And when you have guys like that are confident enough to do what he did today, that's a huge feather in your cap.
It most certainly is. And it just feels like for a 34-year-old defensive coordinator, his first time calling plays in the NFL, his second time calling plays in college NFL combined, to have them be so fundamentally sound and to hear the way a guy like Patrick Queen talked about it and the comments you hear from Calais Campbell ahead of this game, it sounds like they're in a really good place and parted ways with Wink Martindale. If you watch the end of the Giants game, I was with my two buddies. I'm staying at their place. They were like, what do we expect here? I was like, he's going to go mug the A gap. He's going to send 5 or 6 rushers. Your corners are going to be one-on-one. And it's either going to be quick pass 15 yards or sack or, a negative play. There's going to be no in between. And it felt like there was the sense of urgency as pass rushers, but a lot of what the defense did was keeping plays in front of them, losing battles to win wars, going and tackling in space. And it's what the Ravens missed last year.
Yeah. And it makes me think of the whole idea of him like simplifying things too, where you read that Ted Nguyen article in The Athletic and it's talking about, he's got like one word for an entire play call, where guys align, where guys, what their responsibilities are. It's like Air Jordan or like NASCAR or something. That's like literally an entire play call. And it almost makes me wonder, like going to one of my concerns with the offense, like I pointed out on Twitter today and it caught a little bit of traction. Just this idea that like they're doing it again. They're doing the thing where they take forever to huddle. And then, they get to they start setting up with like 10 seconds to go on the play clock. And Lamar's like clapping and like yelling at the offensive line with like 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 seconds to come to, to snap the ball. And it's like, man, we're doing this again, like the third year in a row. We can't.
It was a huge problem yet again.
Yeah. And it's like, at what point are we just kind of spinning our wheels with this shit? And you made the good point that it's just too many substitutions. That's part of it. And then also John Harbaugh said in the presser today about Lamar Jackson and his performance, he was like, yeah, one thing that, really a good professional quarterback thing that he did was get in some really complicated play calls. And it kind of made me wonder a little bit, like, how can we tone down the verbiage?
That was supposed to be the big thing. What you said about having one-word play calls when the Ravens transitioned from Morty Morenweg to Greg Roman, that was supposed to be the same narrative that was talked about, that there are one-word play calls and everyone knows what they're supposed to do. So, hey, maybe that's coach speak bullshit that they say at the presser. But clearly, yet again, a problem that Greg Roman has had and Greg Roman haters have hated since his days in San Francisco. They are making too many substitutions. They are eliminating the speed that they can play at. They are forcing themselves into rush situations. And sometimes it is to your benefit, but the margin for error in trying to milk the clock, you have to be operating with a very close cadence in terms of how quickly your substitution happens, people knowing who comes on and off the field, how you're going to huddle, or if you're going to huddle, where you're aligning. And motion is a huge part of that, which I just had the biggest Baltimore accent ever, I think, because I've had
motion, hon. I can.
Motion.
Yeah, I was putting Devin Duvernay in motion there. He went for a couple touchdowns, pretty good. He beat up on my guy Joe Flacco, and yeah, I don't know. Good day though.
Yeah, Jets didn't give him enough time, but ultimately, all of those things I list, plus many others, you really have to be operating within like a 2-second window of when all of those are happening, you have a very tiny margin for error.
And it also it pot commits you to one play call too. Like you can't get up there and read the defense and say like, okay, and Lamar actually made a few audibles today. He doesn't do that a ton, but he did. But then there was also just the other times where he's like literally doesn't even have time to like assess the defense. It's just like, oh, got to snap this, got to commit to this, and it just goes nowhere. So it's like,
and that also might tell you into how much freedom there is for him to do so.
I doubt
there can be, purely speculative. There can be an aspect to that of limiting that. If I'm a play caller and I don't want the quarterback to change the play, I might put the quarterback in a situation where he doesn't have enough time to. So is that something, that's me maybe whipping something out of nothing or maybe not. But all of those things do go into consideration. And you would hope that in year 5 for Lamar Jackson and 4 with Roman, that they're able to clean that a little bit up. So, did do some nice things in the past game, took advantage of some things, but yet again, operationally, well, it doesn't result in, I think there's a big disconnect of how many penalties are actually called as a result of those things, as opposed to other NFL teams who struggle with similar things. But at the same time, it has been consistent, and it is, in my humble opinion, the biggest thing you can possibly complain about with Greg Roman.
Yeah, that was my only real complaint today, to be honest. And it was frustrating, but ultimately, if that's all you're complaining about in a 24-9 win, that's fine with me. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the game itself. You got anything else before we move on? I guess we can whip around the AFC North a little bit.
Yeah, it was just a great performance defensively, and I thought Lamar, again, came out again for the 4th straight opener, looking to spread the ball around, looking to prove that he is much more than a running back, and I thought he did so.
Yeah, no, big game from him, and definitely a statement game, I think, as well, with throwing the ball, and just very, very solid. But that is, I guess, all we got on that game. Very quickly, AFC North. Oh man, the Brownies get it done over the Panthers in a little bit of a last-ditch effort. I believe the Panthers missed a field goal late, or maybe it was the other way around. The Browns kicked one, but 3-point game there. Baker does not F them up to his point that he made to Cynthia Freeland. So Browns 1-0, and then Joe Shiesty and the boys. What happened? They are 0-1 after a big-time loss to Mitch Trubisky and the Steelers at home. I think Burrow threw 4 picks. It might have been 5. I think it was only 4 picks.
4 picks and a fumble, I believe.
Only 4. Okay, so only 5 turnovers from Joe Burrow, which obviously you got to be able to insurmount that. I can't even joke about it. I probably should have prepped some material here, but Joe Burrow,
2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 33 of 55. Awful performance.
I'm glad they didn't win. They really could have there because Jamar Chase scored literally what would have been a walk-off touchdown.
And also Odell to football, like the classic Odell catch in the back of the end zone, and was 2 inches away from having it in bounds.
Yeah, and then of course he does go and score the touchdown like a play or two later, and it looked a little bit more routine. And it's like, oh my God, these motherfuckers are going to sneak out of here after Burrow threw 4 interceptions with a win. I think Minka, who had a pick 6, fucking blocked the extra point. And yeah, that made it 20-20. I think it goes to overtime. Damn near ends in a tie, but at the end, Cocaine Mitch drives them down and gets them into field goal range for Boswell, who nails it. Steelers win, and Steelers 1-0, Browns 1-0, Ravens 1-0.
TJ Watt unfortunately suffers a pec injury and looks like he's going to be out for the season preliminarily. It's just week 1. Joe Burrow did have appendicitis not too long ago and apparently did lose like 20 pounds. And clearly it felt like they were discombobulated and some of those things. But again, Mike Tomlin is going to have the Steelers competitive, whether you like it or not. I think is the big, if you want to have a week 1 overreaction, I think it's that if it's an overreaction, which it shouldn't be, is that the Steelers will be a competitive football team. Not that the Bengals can't do X, Y, or Z, but that the Steelers in a week 1 divisional game walk out of there. They do lose their best player, which stinks for them, to the Ravens. Unfortunate, but ultimate benefit. But Mike Tomlin's going to have them playing, worst case 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, 10-7 football.
Yeah, they're going to be just fine, I think. And maybe, we'll see what happens.
I feel like it doesn't even matter which quarterback they have in.
Yeah, exactly. Like we'll see what happens with Kenny Pickett long term, but Trubisky is perfectly serviceable, especially for an organization like that. And yeah, they'll be fine. They're going to be hard. They're going to be hard out this year. think the Browns have a chance to be. I thought they looked really solid with Nick Chubb today. Brissett kind of is what he is, but if they can work their way around that, then they'll be okay. And yeah, Bengals, I think they'll be fine too. But it's just funny to kind of, after all the Joe Shiesty,
Mitch, baby.
Yeah, cocaine mix, go out there and get it done for our friends up in Pittsburgh. So that is the whip around in the AFC North. Anything else around the conference, around the league you want to hit on here?
Ravens, we're obviously going to get into more this week, but the Ravens are playing the Dolphins in their home opener, and the Dolphins are a really fucking good football team. I picked them to finish 11-6, and say what you want about Tua Tagovailoa, but again, I can't stop thinking about Jimmy Garoppolo. Now he has Tyreek Hill to give the football to change the offense. And then, oh, by the way, Jalen Waddle's on the other side who busts a 60-yard touchdown. So
yeah,
their defense looked outstanding. I think Tua is plenty good enough to go win games. And Ravens have a really, really tough and creative football team coming to town.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're going to be a frisky matchup, certainly more difficult offensively than the Jets were. They're not just going to roll over after getting sacked a bunch of times. It's going to be harder. It's going to be more creative. I think Mike McDaniel, he's already made a statement by going out and beating Belichick in week 1. I think he's going to he's going to want to do the very same thing to another classic AFC powerhouse. So a lot of mutual respect, I'm sure, is going to be in the offing there. But
and a team that has a lot of players that beat the crap out of a Ravens team last year.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully the Ravens kind of take that and say, hey, you know what? These fuckers really put us on the kind of downslope of the season here. Let's go out and try and embarrass them. So I think
in the episode, I'm going to say I'm most likely going to be predicting a Ravens loss next week.
Look at that. I'm sure that's going to change by the time it's we come around to predictions. But in your mind, you're thinking that. Your heart, you're going to pick them to win. But
I picked it in the season long. I haven't gotten to get into it, but I'm pretty confident I'm going to be picking that. I think the Dolphins are a really good football team.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that when it's time to get to that. But for now, I guess we can get on out of here. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the first recap show of the 2022 season. Always fun to do these things. Always more fun when it's after a Ravens win, and always more fun after a Ravens week 1 win when hope springs eternal and everything just is feeling like good vibes. So yeah, we've got the Dolphins coming to town next week. It's going to be fun. We've bandied about a few potential guests to get on here and break that game down with us, a la the way Connor did last week, some names that you might recognize. So hopefully we can make that happen. We will talk to you then. In the meantime, feel free to follow us on social media. If you're not already, you can find
5 stars. Leave us a 5 star. Share this podcast with a friend.
Yeah, let's get some reviews in there. 5-star reviews on Apple. You can review on Spotify as well now too. So do that. Share with your friends. Word of mouth is the best marketing. I've always
go for it. I don't even know about the Spotify reviews. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, you can at least leave 5 stars. I don't know if you can do a written review, but yeah, you can do it there. And yeah, get after us on YouTube if you like watching. Leave comments. Get after us on Twitter at Podcast Beatdown, at Jake Luke for me, at Ravens 4 Dummies for Spenny. Shoot us all your questions, any stuff you want to talk about the pod. We are active on there and we are available, and we love to talk football. We're just a couple football guys. So thanks everyone for listening. It was really fun to jump back in the studio for the first time this year. We've got 16 at least more of these to go, and it's going to be fun every single time, hopefully. We'll talk to you guys later. Appreciate the patronage as always. And week 1 is over and the Ravens are 1-0.
Undefeated.
See ya. Arrivederci.
Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Get down! Baltimore!
What are they giving? Everything out of me. They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that.